at the time I left the Air Force, God took me out in a very strange way out of the Air Force, and I went to seminary at the Southwestern Baptist Seminary in Fort Worth. And one of my professors was a 2-star general in the military Air Force chaplaincy. And I've always accused him of covertly recruiting me. But it was there that I went back into the Air Force as a chaplain, was stationed many places, hot spots around the world, being deployed there through the Air National Guard, through the Air Force Reserves. And interestingly enough, when I was assigned to the Pentagon, it was not as a chaplain. They hired me especially because of my operational experience. So the military chaplaincy is still a heart of mine, though.
Sure. Well, tell me about the inspiration behind the book, Walk On.
Actually, I had started the book before Todd was killed, but it was an academic book. You know, being a professor and that, I was writing the book from an academic standpoint. And then when this happened with Todd's death, I actually didn't write for 5 years. And then God opened it up as I was teaching and said, okay, it's time. And so the book is totally different, I know now, but it's filled with true life stories of people who've experienced tragedy and difficulties. But the reason I chose Habakkuk is because he is a man, and I liken him as a prosecuting attorney with God on the witness stand. And he's challenging God with all of these questions about why is there evil in the world, and why is there pain and suffering, and why do you allow this, you the loving God, allow this to happen? And so Habakkuk's story is as real today as it was in his day, because all of chapter 2 is about corruption and greed and in government and education, false prophets within the church. And he just really doubts the sovereignty of God. In fact, God says to him, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, but you won't believe me. And the reason is because Habakkuk had God in a box. And we do that too. We, if God doesn't answer us in the box that we've put him in, then we don't hear him. So it took those 3 short chapters for God to work his way out in Habakkuk's life to where the book actually ends with the prophet says, even though the fig trees don't blossom and everything is destroyed, yet through the strength of God I will walk on to the mountaintop. And the message of the book, and that's all I care about people hearing, is that we can walk on in the most difficult of circumstances with our hope in the sovereignty of God, and he is there for us.
2 questions here as we conclude, and one of which has to do with evil and suffering in the world.
Yes, sir.
It sounds like the book of Habakkuk could be considered to be a proof text about some of the different, the sovereignty of God certainly, but also for those who question the faithfulness of God in the midst of all of the evil that we see in this world. What conclusion can one draw from the book of Habakkuk that could be helpful as far as, really at least attempting to come to terms with the world and the suffering?
I believe the best way is to see the reality of Habakkuk in his own world. This man, for decades, questioned God, and God wouldn't answer him. Like, he was just silent. But Francis Schaeffer writes a book called He Is There and He Is Not Silent. And most people, even if they're non-believers, and I wrote the book really aimed at non-believers, but also for the Christian community, because we run into doubt in our own lives on a regular basis. Is God really real? And I have a quote on my wall that was sent to me by another agency. It says, I know the reality of God. I saw him work in my life, and I saw him work in other people's lives. And so for us to know that God is real and that he will be with us, even though sometimes it's through the darkness of life in which he's working things out in our life. And I wouldn't have the ministry I have now, honestly, without having gone through this.